we are back with Messy on Purpose, and I have Cody here with me today. I actually met him at the Shields and Stripes Gala that I was lucky to attend after meeting Steven. So it was kind of just led into another podcast, right? So, Cody, do you want to give a little introduction on yourself, and then we'll kind of dive into some conversation?
Sure. How far back should I go? Well, I'm an executive performance coach. I'm based in Santa Barbara, California, and I'm originally from this area, and I live in a small town called Los Olivos with my wife and two puppies.
What kind of dogs?
Aussie Mountain Doodles and 100%
cute.
Rascals.
Sorry, can't help myself. I'm a huge dog person. So.
Oh, I understand. My phone is just full of dog pictures.
I wish mine was. My dog doesn't like the camera.
Oh, no.
Yeah,
Shame.
she turns away. But sorry, go ahead. Keep going on your introduction.
We met at the Shields and Stripes Gala in Vegas, I think a couple months ago, and I'm on the board as the board secretary, and I've been on the board for over a couple years now. The organization is near and dear to my heart. I have a history in special operations. The founder, Steve Nisbet, he and I were actually stationed at the 321st STS. That's a special tactics squadron in Okinawa back in 2010. And we've just kind of stayed in touch since then. Life has taken us very different journeys, but we've kind of come back, and I'm just really excited to support that organization and the great work they're doing.
It's pretty incredible what they're doing, because there's a lot of, I was telling, like when I talked to him, we were talking about how like there's so many different veteran like nonprofits, but I don't know what a lot of them even do.
Yeah.
Whereas like exactly what their mission is and like how they're helping people, which is really cool.
Yeah, and that it's an actual treatment modalities. I think going on a hunting trip or a fishing trip for veterans and also first responders is really great, and those programs provide a lot of value. But to really do what it takes to do the deep healing and the real reset on how someone lives their life, it takes a significant intervention, and Shields and Stripes is that significant intervention.
Yeah, makes a big difference. I've known a few people that could benefit from a program like that.
And I was going through kind of a difficult time a couple years ago, and I didn't go through the program, but some of their colleagues supported me in going through that, so it makes a big difference.
Was it something like that you had to deal with from like trauma from like PTSD, or like what was it that you were kind of working through?
Yeah, well, I mean, this fits to Messy on Purpose. It's a brilliant name, and for myself, it makes me a little uncomfortable because I like things to be neat and orderly, and I like to know what I'm getting myself into. And Felicia, at no point in my life has it actually gone how I planned. So
life would be
perfect.
Way too easy if it did.
Yeah. I've been dealing and managing depression since I was probably 16 years old. I was an exchange student for a year when I was 16. I left middle of my sophomore year of high school to middle of my junior year of high school, and I lived in Japan with a Japanese family, and I was the first white kid at my high school over there. I struggled with the language and fitting in, and then I came back to the States, and I also had a struggle fitting in, and I had just had this eye-opening experience of, being a citizen of the world and seeing all this stuff and having to go through all the stress and pressure of one, just being 16, and then doing it in a totally foreign place, and then coming back to regular school where people were still interested in what they were interested a year ago. And because of that, I don't know if disparity is the right word, but because of that disconnect, I went into a depressive spell. And that's happened, throughout my life, every, I say, few years or so. And, I mentioned doing the deep healing earlier. I've had to do a lot of work in order to kind of get my hands on the levers and dials of kind of these symptoms and these thoughts and mental states that come up for me. So that's, and it definitely is messy and not a straight line. And I've gotten some spectacular, amazing performance, and I am such a stronger, more grounded human being because I've had to really go through those spaces and confront, what there is to confront.
When so do you think it like all kind of stemmed from that whole like being that 16, that teenage years, and then like going to like a foreign place and having to adapt and deal with like, the judgment and things that go along with that at that age, right? Like people that you're not so familiar with and they're not familiar with you.
Well, it didn't help. I've done a lot of looking and trying to get to the source of what this is, and I haven't gotten to like a source of why my brain chemistry is just this way. I mean, you could go back into generational trauma. You could go back to eating too much sugar or cereal when I was younger. I don't know the source of it. And it almost doesn't matter what the source is because, I've got what I got. And, like everybody else on the planet, we gotta, play the hand we're dealt the best we can. Not that, that's the end of the story, or there's not a lot we can do to support ourselves. But, if, we deny being a particular way, what we resist persists.
I think the start is awareness, right? Like being aware that we are the way we are. Like whether that's your little quirks or my little quirks, we like just being that self-aware and knowing how to deal with yourself kind of helps you deal with, everything else.
Yeah.
So what where did you start in like the stages of like kind of figuring out like, okay, I dive into these little depression things. How do I deal with this? What started that journey of like kind of figuring your self-awareness out and working towards things that made it better?
I was really fortunate in that, going to therapy and talking about kind of these moods was common in my family. So it was never like stigmatized. And it's certainly, the whole conversation around going to therapy has changed within the last 40 years to the better, I think. So I've always been curious on, what happened? Why do I, lean a particular way to have these, kind of darker thoughts or not be really excited about life? And like who I really am, like my full expression is like really curious, really excited, really present. And then sometimes I'm not. So I just get curious about that.
So the curiosity of like why you thought so, like, are you kind of like, are you interested into like learning about psychology and how like the brain works and like diving into that kind of stuff? Because I kind of nerd out on that. I love reading psychology books.
Yeah. Well, I've spent a good portion of my life looking for what is the source of high performance. So what is the source of my performance when I'm doing well versus when I'm not doing well? And that's a lot in, kind of my profession, and what I'm doing now is supporting people in, getting an edge in whatever work environment they're in. So yeah, I've got bookshelves full of books about that. And I had an opportunity to go work for, so I separated the military in late 2015, and I had the opportunity to go work for a philosopher in London who really pioneered executive coaching, and also a massively successful consultant, and has made a difference for like millions and millions of people. So I got to learn from him and study what actually has people take action. Because I don't know if you noticed, sometimes people don't take the action they know to take.
I think a lot of people are scared to like take that first step. That first step's the hardest part.
It can be, but it's all results are a product of action. You take an action and you get a result. And the common, what we think that action comes from is from what we know to do. So, I know not to eat really sugary cereal now because I'll get up and down with my mood because of it. And I know drinking a whole lot, doesn't support me. But, I assert that most Americans know how to lose weight. You eat less and exercise more. It's just physics in the body. And knowing that doesn't make any difference to people's actions. So there's something behind that that's actually driving what we're doing. And from, my research and discovery and having some really great teachers along the way, I've found that, context, if you look up the definition of context, it's the non-physical setting. It's the thing that shapes and colors the life we're living in. So in my training, going through INDOC and special operations, we started with 80 guys, we ended with 10. And one of the exercises is they bound our feet together and our hands behind our back, and then they pushed us into the deep end of the pool. One context is, oh my God, the instructors are trying to kill me. Totally valid context. And then the other context is the instructors are giving me an opportunity to train to be calm in a stressful situation. Also totally valid context. So the circumstances are the same, but how we're looking at what's happening to us paints the whole picture of how we interact, how we communicate, the actions we take, and therefore the results we're able to produce. I forget your question, but that's the answer I gave you.
It was a good answer. I kind of forgot it too, to be honest. When it comes to learning, what that means to take that action, how have you used what you learned in your own life?
As you pointed out earlier, just having that self-awareness, and also having some awareness that we have blind spots. I know I have blind spots. I know there are things that I can't see, and how I remedy that, because I'm not clever enough to see them myself. How I remedy that is I ensure I have people around me to point out my blind spots. I have, people that mentor me and coach me, and I'm just very fortunate to have built up a community around me to, support me in being aware of, the stuff I do. And my partner also, she's amazing. She'll call me out when I'm trying to be screwy or not good to myself.
I get it. I do it to my husband too. So
Yeah,
I'm like,
good for you.
Yeah, that's a little too much ice cream, bro. So on the other side, so flip it a little bit. Now you work with people, you coach people.
Yeah.
How do you use this when helping others?
Yeah, great question. Well, how I use it is it's designing an engagement, designing a conversation in order to actually give somebody access to new ways of acting and new ways of being. So what do I mean by access? I can tell you what to do, and that may work or that may not work. Oftentimes it will not work. Even if we pay somebody to do something, that's not a guarantee that they'll actually do it. So it's designing a conversation, and what I do with, whether it's one-on-one executive coaching or, I'm also working with an engineering firm right now. I'll go in and I'll do interviews. And the same as you go and see a doctor, they take, a sample of blood, they take blood pressure, how much you weigh. It's finding out what people are talking about in the organization. What are people worried about? What are conversations that people are not having that you would be expecting them to have? And designing and packaging that as, I give it to them as a report of like, here's the culture of your organization. Here's what you're talking about. Here are your worries. Here are your passions. Here's your weak spots. Here's where you can really get some leverage points. So it's starting with that, again, Felicia, the awareness of what's working, what's not working, that really support people in being open to, maybe hearing something different.
Do you ever come across like you have a business or just a single person that you're working with, and you kind of do that evaluation process, and then you realize that they're not going to make a change?
No.
No.
I haven't yet met somebody where I can't make some sort of difference. There are people who are just like up for it. And then there are some other people who will resist a little bit. But there's, I got a number of tools that I can use to kind of get past people's defenses. And as far as I can tell, I've made a difference with everybody that I've worked with. Sometimes not as much as I would like, but generally, at the end of 6 months, people are not the same people they were 6 months ago.
And I would think somebody who's reaching out to you is already serious and ready for a change, right? Like, it's not like you're just cold calling someone and like trying to get them on board. They have some type of interest usually, right?
Yeah, and that's one thing. You can't coach somebody that's not open to coaching. That's kind of the first rule. So they got to be open to maybe hearing something new about themselves. They got to be open to taking on a new perspective. And if at some point during the engagement they kind of shut down and they're not open to coaching, then that's a conversation we have. But I love working with people who are operating at a high level, who love what they do and are looking for an edge. And working shoulder to shoulder with them, we get that edge.
Do you have like an example of like a situation, maybe generalized, obviously, we don't use names or anything, but like of somebody who was a little bit resistant in the coaching process and like, making a change, and you kind of flipped that, and how you did that?
Yeah. So, I just want to make sure when I speak, I don't use any names or specifics.
Let's say subject A.
I was recently working with someone. He's massively successful at his business, but there was something he needed, an action he needed to take that he was resisting taking. And he was already like really busy and couldn't find the time, but this action would make a significant impact in his future. It would cause him to be a partner in the firm he would be going into. But he just, week after week after week after week, he wouldn't take the action. So I finally, I asked him, is the house on fire? If your house is on fire, you're running to go get the kids and get them out to safety. You're calling the fire department. You're getting a hose. And if anybody's in your way, you shove them out of your way and you're in action about it. It's critical. And, I explained all that to him. And so I asked, is the house on fire regarding this action that you have to take? And he said, no. And so we talked about what life would look like if he never took the action, if he missed the opportunity. We talked about what life would look like and what he would not have out of, continuing to procrastinate. And he started to get it really real for him what this action was and what it made available, until it started to occur like the house was actually on fire for him to take that action. So it's, and Felicia, all that is context.
Yeah.
So it's having a conversation to change how life, how the circumstances starts to show up for somebody, such that they're like, oh God, yeah, I have to act. Like,
you
if
think
anybody
it's like more
gets
bringing it to like reality? Like you have this idea, but it's not really reality until you act on it. So is it like kind of that conversation to bring this reality to this idea?
Yeah, brilliant. Yeah, it's taking a focused look and actually stepping inside of what life is going to look like without taking the actions to take. And man, doing this work, it actually takes work. This is not like fun stuff.
Most life-changing things takes work.
Yeah. But like all great things, that are worth your time, it's going to take some work. Shifting the context for folks is a really big lever that's used. And it's easy to do for yourself too.
It's easy to talk about it. I don't know if it's necessarily easy for everyone to do.
Well, yeah, you're right. I take back what I said. It's simple. It's not easy.
And you currently work with like higher level, but like, how did you get to this point in your career? Like, what brought you down this path?
Man makes plans and God laughs. I did martial arts when I was younger, and when I was 19, graduated high school, I was trying out City College, and I wanted to do martial arts again. So there was a kung fu studio in my town, and I misread the sign, and they were closed when I showed up. So there was an Aikido dojo. Aikido is a Japanese martial art, all defensive. Aikido dojo down the street. I'm like, all right, I'll go try that. So I go in, really great community. I had my uniform with me. I put it on. I didn't know anything about Aikido. And the instructor, his name's Tatacho, I don't know, 5'5", ponytail, big beard, just like these ropey hands.
Just
really
what you would expect, right?
Yeah. And he just proceeds to beat me up for an hour, just like slam my face into the mat. I found myself thrown against the wall. I'm 6'4", so he's like half the size of me.
I was going to say, I think I remember you being pretty tall.
Yeah. And he just absolutely obliterated me. And he kept like making fun of me and like just cranking on my arms and wrists. And it was not done in like a malicious way, even though like I know he was having fun doing it. It was done. I'd never experienced like being physically challenged like that before. And I started to get like really interested in kind of what's that about. And I wanted to like learn how to, I guess, command presence in the room like he did, and being able to control my body, to control other people the way he was able to. I ended up moving in with him and his family in the mountains. They were living in the mountains, no electricity or running water. For 9 months, I stayed in a canvas hunting tent, and I got up at 5 a.m. The stars and moon are still out, and I would practice for hours in the morning, and then running up mountains with backpacks full of gravel, and then chopping down trees on one side of the mountain and dragging it over to the other side, and then burying it in the ground and using it to practice strikes on. And he would, beat me up and throw me in the dirt and train and train and train.
Was this before or after the military?
This was before the military.
Okay. Interesting.
Yeah. And it was a life-altering experience for me. I loved the intensity. I loved the drive. I love who I had to become in order to thrive in that sort of environment. Then an opportunity came to go train in Japan for a year. So without knowing anybody in Tokyo, I moved to Tokyo. I met somebody that I just was told he would meet me at the airport, and he reserved a room for me, and I did a course called Senshusei course, and it's a year-long intensive Aikido course. There was about 6 of us training. It was 7 hours a day, 5 days a week, like very hardcore Japanese dojo, trying to knock each other out all day long. No sick days for the entire year. If you were injured, you still had to be there in class, sitting on the side, making the instructors tea in the morning, and then cleaning toilets and locker rooms at the end of the day. It was really intense, like people passing out on the mat, kind of intense. And kind of that whole experience got me interested and sort of catalyzed what I'm doing now. I went into special operations later, and that's just kind of a
prepared.
Yeah, it was a kind of a continuation of what I had what I'm up to, what really excites me, is funny that I was just thinking this morning, what really excites me is elevating people, elevating communities, elevating organizations. Because if humanity is going to go to the next era, whatever that era is going to be, it's going to take people operating at a higher level than what they're operating now. It's going to take people being bigger with higher capacity, higher capabilities than they are right now. And what I'm on the planet for is giving people access to that.
You feel like that's your full purpose. You've figured that out, and that's what you're working towards?
Yeah, like right now, like that's it. And it may look in a different capacity later, but if I kind of trace the path of my life, it's kind of led perfectly to me be where I'm at now.
So you went through all of that, then decided to go into the military, and then when you got out of the military, how did you get into, helping these high achievers succeed more?
So I was either going to get a boat and sail around the world by myself or go to university, and neither of those things happened. I ended up getting, as I said earlier, a job with a philosopher. I mean, he's really a CEO, someone who pioneered organizational transformation. And I learned a ton from him, was trained by him and mentored. And where a lot of the tools that I have now and a lot of who I am is from that experience. It was like working with the force of nature. Someone really clear what worked and what didn't work. And I had to expand who I was, my capabilities and my capacities to match that every day. So I was out in London for 6 years. I met my wife out there. We moved back to the States in 2021. I got a job working for probably the premier organizational transformation company. They've been doing it for 35, 40 years. And I learned a lot there. Got to work at Mayo Clinic, S.E. Johnson, Sierra Nevada, building some strategic assets. I don't know anything about e-commerce implementation or, building aircraft or anything like that. But I do have a keen understanding of teams and how to get people flying information and what's possible when people are aligned and moving forward together. You can make industrial miracles happen with that.
Is there a specific system you usually use with these different organizations? Or is this is it subjective to a different system depending on who it is?
I don't know about a system. There are certain principles that I use. And one of those principles is, and I think we were talking about this the other day, getting people really clear the kind of environment they're working in. Like what actually constitutes, how the world works. So none of that made any sense, so I'll explain it a little bit. Do you know the difference between complex and complicated?
You explained it to me when we talked the other day, but go ahead and do it again, just so that way everyone kind of knows that's listening.
Yes. Yeah, so my watch has complications on it. One of them is the date. So every 24 hours, if I keep my watch wound, every 24 hours, the number will change. That's a linear system. I know if I wind it, I know exactly what I'm going to get out the other end. Complex is when there are so many moving parts, and each of those parts, also called actors, each of those actors are making independent decisions, that it's actually impossible to predict what the outcome is going to be. So if I input 5, I get 10 one time, then I input 5 and I get 3,700. Unpredictable with a complex adaptive system. The brain is a complex adaptive system. So many neurons and so many connections, and it adapts to the world around it, that we get this phenomenon happens called emergence, called our personalities, or whatever it is you want to call it. The economy. There are so many businesses in the US, and each making independent decisions and each adjusting to the market factors, that what emerges out of that is the economy. So there's nothing wrong with planning linearly. You do this, do this, do this. But just don't kid yourself that it's actually going to go that way. So one principle that I use when I'm working with organizations and strategy is coming up with a set of outcomes. So you could say a set of realities that, if all those realities happen, would allow for the emergence of the future they want to create. So a really basic example of that is, if I'm trying to lose weight, one outcome is we only have healthy food in the house. Now, it doesn't guarantee anything, but it greatly enhances the probability of, my losing weight. Another outcome is I have 2 hours a day in my calendar free to do exercise. It doesn't guarantee I'm going to use that time, but it greatly enhances the probability of my actually exercising during that time. So it's creating the set of realities that actually will bring about what they're interested in. So that's, I don't know if that's a tool, maybe more of a principle of how I work with organizations, and it's the same with people too.
It's kind of just coming up with a strategy that works with like what they have and where they want to be, right? Like the directions they can go. Yeah.
And I also spend, again, working with this engineering firm, I probably spent half a day with them on just getting them really clear where they're currently at. In my training in pararescue, they would put a bag over our head, throw us in the back of a panel van, and drive to the top of a mountain. And then they'd let us out, take the bag off, and we'd have no idea where we were. And then they'd give us coordinates on where to go. Well, if you don't know where you're starting, there's no way you're going to get to where you want to go. So the first thing we had to do, using compass, and there's other techniques on how to do that, is to find out on the map just where are we. And then you can start to actually create structures, create outcomes, do some planning to bring about where you want to end up on the map.
It's interesting, all the experiences that you've had that are so extreme, and yet you're helping people on a day-to-day where they think those changes are extreme. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, you hear your story, and I'm like, oh, life is not that hard. I'll just do what I need to do.
Yeah.
It was like the Japan experience, then that experience, and I'm sure there's many other ones. I'm just like, oh, I cannot imagine having a bag put over my head, let alone go somewhere I don't know where I'm going.
Yeah, I could think of like 3 other things I'd rather have happen to me than have a bag put over my head and taken away.
Yeah. I don't think I'd make it through the bag. Freak out.
Yeah.
Do you tell those examples to the people that you work with? Like that example that you just gave. Do you explain those to people to let them understand the process?
I have. I think they're like really great illustrations, and I think they create a good point. And
Extreme, but yeah.
and it's an exciting story too. So stories are fun.
They are, especially when they're things that people like. That's something out of a movie. You know what I mean? Like nobody, like everyday life, even thinks of that being possible to happen to them or anyone they know. And
Yeah.
then like you're sitting here like, well, this happened to me. I'm like, oh my god.
It puts things in perspective.
It does. It does. It just kind of goes back to like, you might think your situation is tough, but somebody's got something worse, right? Or
Always.
the situation's serious, more serious than yours. And like, you should just be grateful for the good things.
Yeah. Yeah, always. Yeah, and I have to be really careful with myself just to remind myself and get present to everything I do have, everything that I do have available. And it doesn't clear everything up. There's not like the light of Zeus shining upon me and I'm this transcendent person, but it kind of takes some of the weight off my back as I'm, going about my day.
It's funny when you're more aware how much you can actually think that way. Whereas like, I feel like, your average, like lower class type people are going to typically fall into a little different mindset, and it's a lot harder for them to get out of it and see the good around them. Versus you've had like crazy experiences, but you're self aware to know like, oh, even if I'm having a hard time right now, I have all these good things around me too.
Yeah.
When I had a question and I lost it. It's gone.
Okay. Take your time.
Think about it. Oh yeah. So how about a cute, like, do you have like a crazy like success story, like somebody that you've taken from, here to here?
Yeah, a few. Let me. I'll pick one. I don't normally work for. Normally, the people I coach are like executives in business, and I coach the whole person, so their life is also involved in that. So there's also some work doing that, but generally it's a work context. For this particular client, she just wanted support in getting her to exercise, and she was an older lady, and she was just really inconsistent. And through this exploratory process of finding out kind of what are the facts of the matter, where are you actually starting from, don't look at where you want to go next. Let's look at what your current situation is. What is your context for working out? What is your context for diet? How do those things show up for you? What are your other relationships like? So getting really clear on the foundation, and then I didn't use this with her, but just showing her the house is on fire with her health. And at the end of my time working with her, she was an athlete. Like her body still had some catching up to do and some training to do. But, an athlete, when someone's an athlete, they love going to the gym. When someone's an athlete, using their body is a self-expression, like a great singer or a great dancer. uses that's their self-expression. When someone's an athlete, they're, eating right, and they're really interested in their metrics, and they're really interested in improving time. And she had gotten to that place where she was an athlete.
And so she started basically just completely out of shape. Older, how old did you say? Like,
She was in her 70s, actually.
oh wow. Okay, so that's even
Yeah.
like that's a big step to be out of shape at that age. Because I mean, once you hit like the hump of 50, typically it's a lot harder to like put on muscle, and so it takes a lot
Yeah.
more work. So that's crazy to be in your 70s and have that big of a change. That had to have
Yeah.
felt good to make that kind of impact.
It was wonderful. Amazing lady, too. I was so lucky to have worked with her as well. And, I check in with her still every once in a while, and she's doing fantastic. Yeah, altered her life.
That's so cool. Do you have like, I know you said you have a couple stories, so do you have one that's kind of business related?
I do. I was working with a fast-moving consumer goods company. You would know the name, and working with their North American sales department. And I was working with the manager of kind of North American sales. And I mean, this was a really interesting one. I was just working with him and having to, in a sense, work with him so he could work on the whole organization. It's probably not a great way to explain it.
It's so he can kind of do the big picture instead of being in the day to day, basically.
Yeah. So how do I explain it? He had walked into an organization that had certain habits and ways of doing business. And those habits and ways of doing business were, in the ground into the fabric of the organization. And those habits and ways of doing business were no longer effective in driving the numbers. So he had to create an intervention, an emergency. He had to lead and be a force for people to rally behind these new practices, these new implementations, like a brand new way of doing business. And when I started working with him, also just amazing guy. But, when I first showed up at the dojo in Japan, I was not up to the task of doing that. It was training day after day and pressing more and expanding myself and being curious and practice and discipline is huge. Disciplining himself to drive the culture, drive the conversations in ways that actually worked. And I just followed up with him a number of months ago, and he said the numbers have turned around now. They're doing fantastic. Just the whole organization is different.
It just took like the putting in the reps, really, right? Like we're just continuous reps to build that discipline to keep going, and
Yeah.
eventually it pays off. Sometimes you don't see it for a long time.
Yeah, and if I could make it happen faster, I could probably charge a lot more money than I'm getting now, and I'd be living in a bigger house. But as far as I can tell, it just takes some work.
Takes time. Have you had people get discouraged on how long it takes sometimes?
Oh, definitely. Yeah. And given my history of training and having to discipline myself through the many modalities I've had to learn, I absolutely understand that. But, the the difference between a master and someone who dabbles is a master stays on the path. And that's it. Someone who dabbles.
So what is like the piece of advice that you give somebody who's, they're putting in the reps, but doesn't feel like anything's changed? Everything changes, right? Like every day something's changed, but you don't always see it. It's kind of like working on a fitness goal, right? Like you could take your picture once a week and not like you're not really seeing anything, or daily and you're not really seeing anything, but you take, day 1 and day 30 and look at that, and there's a huge change. So that small process, like while somebody's kind of at day 10 or day 20 and not really noticing anything, what kind of advice do you give them to keep going?
What's made a difference for me is getting that all life is climbing the mountain. It's a mountain with no top. And every once in a while you get to a plateau, and then there's all the mountain left to climb. And it's creating for somebody the joy of climbing versus, thinking that someday they'll arrive. And again, it's great to celebrate when you do reach a goal, when you've got, a little ledge to stand on and rest for a little bit. Definitely celebrate that. And then there's more mountain to climb.
Well, it's like never ending. Like you said, there's no top, right? You just keep going. Once you hit a goal, you should be making a new one anyways.
Yeah. So, someone who wants to, impact their life and their not enjoying the diet, not enjoying the gym, I would, have a conversation with them in how to transform the diet and the gym so it's an opportunity for them, not I need to get to this to, make myself, feel better or feel worthy or some other excuse people think is going to, again, the light of Zeus is going to shine down upon me when I have a six-pack. Not going to happen.
The fun part of that is you get to the 6-pack and then you got to turn around and gain again so you can look different the next 6-pack.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's an endless process.
Yeah.
So, is there anything else you want to touch base on? I'm like kind of running out of questions, I think.
Yeah. Well, I would encourage everybody to go check out the Shields and Stripes website. It's a phenomenal program. To look us up on LinkedIn and shieldsandstripes.org.
You brought that up. Let's talk about that a little bit. So when it comes to being part of Shields and Stripes, what do you do like on the board, and what got you on the board? Because that's always an interesting thing too. How do you end up on a board for a nonprofit?
Yeah. When I moved back to the States, I saw what Steve was posting a lot on LinkedIn about Shields and Stripes, and I reached out and said, I'm doing management consulting now, and I'd love just to be of service and support Steve and co-founder Jen and however I could. So we had some calls, and I think I might have supported them with some organizational stuff and putting together some systems and focusing them a little bit on what was going to make, I think, a bigger difference. And I, was just of service for a year, not trying to get anywhere, but just doing it because it was a great cause. And then they were looking to expand the board, and I was invited to join as the board secretary. So, I didn't have an intention of going out and joining a board, and it's honestly like a lot of work, and I don't know if it sounds glamorous or not, but it is just doing a lot of the work. So I'm scheduling meetings and following up with people and making sure the organization is legally protected, and we're doing our job as a board to fully support our customers, which are our athletes, the veterans and first responders, and we're continuing that mission in full service of them.
And that transition into the board, did you enjoy it more before you were on the board or more on the board?
Moments of both.
Moments of both.
I did, when I first got the invitation, I Googled, what does a board secretary do? And I've been figuring it out ever since.
Well, and it's a growing nonprofit too, right? So, I'm sure there's a lot of, what can we do with this role as they're adding and expanding?
Yeah, and we did 3 programs this year. Phenomenal response from them. We just had a meeting with everybody in the organization earlier this week, and we are effective, and we're getting the numbers are they don't lie, and we've got some really great partnerships with Aura Ring, which is a really big deal, and of course wearing my Christopher Award watch, we got a great partnership with them as well. They make wonderful products.
They made a big donation at the gala. I remember that. It was
my gosh, so generous, and just the stands that they have for veterans and first responders is enormous and worth checking out.
Yeah, it seems like there's a lot of good people behind Shields and Stripes, from what I've seen.
100%. And then if anybody's interested in reaching out to me, cernyperformance.com. You can find me on LinkedIn as well. Where I come from is first just being of service, having a conversation that makes a difference. So I'm happy to support people with whatever they're dealing with.
From anything from your everyday fitness to elite
I guess
CEO. Is there a last message you want to kind of leave everyone with? A piece of advice?
Oh, gosh. What's something really clever I could say that would have people remember this?
I should have let you know before you got on here, huh? So you were prepared.
Thanks for the heads up. Look, I would say you and I actually have a lot more to say about the quality of our life than we actually give credit to. We actually we don't have everything to say about the quality of our life, but we got a lot to say about it. And if that's of interest to you, start reading, start discovering, start having more conversations about it.
I like that. That was a good piece of on-the-spot advice.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you so much for coming on. If you want to hold up after, I do my bye,
Okay.
We'll chat a little bit about when the episode's coming out and everything. But thank you again for coming on, telling a little bit of your story, giving a lot of advice, and sharing some more about Shields and Stripes. Until next time, guys. Bye.